Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. We've seen several different adjustments made to some of the top SMGs here in Season 4 Reloaded, changes to things like the Blixen, the Marco, the Armaguerra, etc. And initially, when I was going through the patch notes, one weapon that stood out to me was the Armaguerra because it got a slight nerf, and before, it was sort of just behind the Blixen and the Marco in terms of what was the absolute meta, right? And with that nerf, I figured, oh, you know, it might fall off a bit. But turns out, if you switch just a couple of things around on the what was best Armaguerra setup before, you get this new setup that absolutely fries. So today we're going over the new best TTK Armaguerra loadout to be running in Warzone right now. As we break it all down, if you enjoy the video at any point, let me know by dropping a like on it. It would be seriously appreciated. And if you are new to the channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, because every day I got you covered with everything going on in COD. So first up, we are here on True Game Data because we got a lot of stats to go over to see if this new Armaguerra can actually hold its own in the current meta. Now, with the Reloaded update, one of the main nerfs was to the precision barrel, which actually helps out with headshot damage. Previously, that was a great barrel to run because it offered very low recoil and a great TTK. And you can see here, Tony actually has the pre and post nerf stats for the precision barrel, where you can see the blue line was the pre-nerf one, which has a much better TTK through those first 16 meters. Now the orange line is where it's at if you're using that first initial precision barrel. And that's just to the head though, so obviously that barrel is focused on headshot damage. However, if we were to go through and look at combination shots here, as always, shout out to Tony for putting in the work. You can see our pre-patch Armaguerra here, we don't really need that anymore because obviously it's not the way to go. So we got three options here of the orange line, which is the precision barrel still with the 9mm 16 recoil booster, the pink line, which is the 9mm recoil booster, and just the basic 550 barrel, which has no increased headshot damage, just a lot more standard and easy to use. And we've got the 9mm 60 recoil booster and the Bodhi 315 barrel, which is like the super aggressive barrel here. Worse control, but better theoretical TTK. And when you look at the stats, that actually holds true. Our green line here, surprisingly a decent gap in the TTK here up close through those first 10 meters. And then over range, it actually holds its own too, which I really was not expecting. Usually some of the better, more aggressive barrels have pretty rough fall offs around like 15, 17 meters, but you can see this one drops off right with the precision barrels, and they're basically the same over range. Now, yes, it has worse control, so you might find yourself landing a couple of more 20, 25 meter shots with something like the precision, but for pure aggression, the Bodhi barrel here, the 315, definitely the way to go. So now with that in mind, we know the Bodhi barrel, the 315 barrel, is the best TTK option for this particular setup. Let's see how that contends against other top SMGs, like the Blixen, the Marco, then also the Owen gun, which is still very impressive. And when we look at this graph, we actually get some numbers that I am very surprised by. I did not realize that with this build, with the combination shots here, as always, shout out to Tony, we actually have the best TTK through the first 10 meters. Now, it's not a huge gap versus something like the Blixen, which is our pink line here, or the Marco, which is our blue line, but it is a better TTK. And then that initial drop off takes place 2 meters before the other weapons, and then it's back to being slightly better over range and slightly better after that drop off outside of the Blixen here, which has a whopping, 5 meter advantage. And then over range, although you're not obviously using this build at 30, 35, 40 meters, it does still have the best TTK when you're landing shots. So that to me was very surprising that this super aggressive Armaguerra build not only is outgunning our popular Blixen and Marco setups up close, but even in some of that mid-range for SMGs, which is like, 15 to 25 meters, it's still a top tier choice. Not to mention its recoil plot, while it's not as straightforward as say the Blixen through the first 20 meters here. By the way, the Marco not on the recoil chart yet, but that recoil pattern is not terrible. It's not the greatest in the world, but certainly doable for some of that mid-range area too. So it's not like you're gonna be missing a ton of shots. It's actually relatively controllable. So that said, what does this setup look like? So obviously, as we saw on the graph, we're going for the recoil booster. We're going for the 315 barrel, which is better damage. Also less damage fall off at long range. That's really why it's able to actually be consistent over that mid-range area. Without that pro on there, this barrel probably wouldn't be all that worth it, but it clearly works for what it is. Then for the magazine, as we saw, we also got the 9mm 60. This is just your basic extended mag. Really, the 42 round fast mag, not worth it. 72 round mags, also not really all that great. It slows you down, makes it a little bit less aggressive for very minimal payoff. Your only other option would be the 30 Russian short 34, which do have a really good TTK, but its increased fire rate on a 34 round mag, it's just not viable for 99% of players, maybe outside of solos. you could not use this thing realistically and fight at any sort of disadvantage, or even 2-on-2. You're already going to be in a sticky situation there. This is a solo magazine, so if you're just a die-hard solo player, you could probably switch that on the setup and you would have a slightly better TTK, but really 9mm60 is the only realistic choice there. Now, some players like the basic iron sight variants here, the SC or the Largo. I'm not really a huge fan of that. I feel like I'm a lot more accurate with just your basic slate reflector. Obviously, no real cons to running that, so you got that just fine. For the stock, I am still loving skeletal here because it's going to give you slightly better initial firing control, which obviously, as we saw, will help out with that somewhat sporadic recoil pattern in comparison, but also a better ADS and better strafe speed. So you're getting a super aggressive stock here that's going to help out in a lot of different areas. For the underbarrel, you certainly have some options. Obviously, there is some horizontal movement, so you could totally use strife angled if you wanted to. It's going to hurt your ADS a little bit. You could also definitely use carver or even hand stop if you wanted to as well. Both of those would help out with the control, but honestly, I've sort of learned that despite the control, you can still manage this relatively easy, and the compact underbarrel is actually a ton of fun because, again, it's going to help out with that aim walking movement speed or that strafe speed, so you're getting a very fast, agile build while you're aiming down sights and actually firing at enemies, which is nice because when you start to build weapons more for strafe, it throws off your enemies a lot because you don't expect players to be moving much when they are shooting back at you. Obviously, if they're trying to get that movement going on, that's before the gunfight is happening or mid gunfight when they're trying to rotate around or duck behind cover, not while they're actually firing back at you. So that can really throw players off. For the ammo here, you always got choices. You could do lengthened if you wanted to. You could do subsonic, hollow point, or frangible. I just personally like staying off the map, especially in this third-party meta that we've got going on where every single gunfight, it feels like you're getting third-partied. You might as well stay off the radar. For the rear grip, I'm always going for taped here just for that better movement. Makes the entire build a lot more aggressive. However, if you do want some control base here, you could always go for something like hatched. Never a bad choice there, but for me, I'm going for taped. That's my personal preference. Perk 1, I do go for hard scope in this case, just for that slightly better control while you are aiming down sights. That'll help out a little bit there. Then lastly, always going for quick on all the SMGs for a better sprint speed. So essentially what you're getting here is a build that has a great TTK, as we saw, the best in the game up close out of the top tier meta SMGs. Also has really good movement in terms of just general mobility, but also pretty decent strafe speed by comparison. And it's got great magazine capacity as well with somewhat decent control. So you kind of are checking all boxes with this build, and it turns into an absolute monster, especially for close range. Pair this with one of the top tier rifles, the KG, the NZ, etc. You got a great secondary here, an absolute beast, and I'm having such a fun time with this one. That said, that'll wrap things up for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed, hopefully you learned something new. If you did either, let me know by dropping a like on the video. Really helps the channel grow. And if you're new here, feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications, because every single day I got you covered with all things going on in COD, news, updates, loadouts, tips, you name it, you'll find it right here. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.